Hello. I want to share with you something beautiful from the scriptures. You remember that the Apostle Paul would call himself the master builder? The Apostle Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles, and the Apostle Peter was the apostle to the circumcision. They seem to have divided the whole world concerning the proclamation of the gospel between themselves. They were the main architects of the church. The church was to be the place where God would dwell by His Spirit, Paul speaks of in Ephesians chapter 2. Now in the Old Testament there was also two people named Bezalel and Aholiab who were in charge of the construction of the tabernacle, which is the place where God would dwell with His people. Now the Old Testament is always filled with types of things fulfilled in the New Testament. In the New Testament we have the church, which is the temple where God dwells by His Spirit. And in the Old Testament we have a tabernacle where God dwells by His Spirit. In the New Testament we have two people who are in charge on the construction of the church, which is Peter and Paul. And in the Old Testament we have two people, which is Bezalel and Aholiab, in charge of the construction of the tabernacle, which is the place where God would dwell with His people. Now these two men, Bezalel and Aholiab, in the Old Testament, were filled with the Spirit of God to work with gold and silver and bronze and wood and precious gems and all the materials that had to do with the constructing of the tabernacle. Now they were also filled with wisdom to be able to teach others how to work with the tabernacle. Now is it not true that the two men, which are Paul and Peter, teach us through the scriptures and how to manage the church, how to build the church? Through their epistles in the New Testament, they teach us how to behave within the church, how to build it. Just like these two men in the Old Testament taught others how to build it. Now here is where the coincidence comes. Peter healed with his shadow. Now Bezalel in Hebrew means in the shadow of God. And Paul was a tent maker. And Aholiab in Hebrew means in the tent of the Father. This is too much for it to be a coincidence. What it is a type of Peter and Paul within the Old Testament. Bezalel and Aholiab are in charge of building the temple, just like Peter and Paul were in charge of building the church. This is one of those illustrations that God conceals within the scriptures. Like it says in Proverbs chapter 25 verse 2, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it is the honor of kings to search out the matter. It is a beautiful thing to find these things in the scriptures, and these things feed our spirit. They strengthen us in faith. They empower us to live as Christians, as the redeemed people of God, as the chosen people of God. So my dear brother, rejoice in your God, rejoice in your Redeemer, because He lives. God bless you.